Okay, now we're recording. Yes, great. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. All right. Is this, can everyone see?
Yes.
Okay. Present. All right. So, hi everyone. This is my intern project presentation. Let's get started. First of all, hello. I wanted to reintroduce myself and just say that I am Eugenia, and I started here at GitLab as an intern at the end of May, but my internship is only technically 30 days long, as I was doing 2 days a week until now. So that's me. And why did I do this? Well, I had the opportunity and I really wanted to hashtag Summer of Code 2019. I was given the chance to improve my skills as a data analyst and I ran with it. So that being said, here is a brief overview of what we're going to be talking about today. The idea, working with the data, the insights that I gathered, what's next, like what could be next with the project I developed, and then just a very brief conclusion. Okay, so to start with the idea, I was thinking about what I could do, what I could research, what I could look at that would bring the most value to GitLab in this short amount of time that I have. So I was thinking like, well, what is it that everyone has in common? Well, the onboarding issue, right? Everyone has to do the onboarding issue. I'm not talking about team-specific onboarding issue. The PeopleOps onboarding issue that has, days 1 through 5, task completion. Everyone does this, right? So I thought, if I look at this information, there must be a way that I can look at open or hire date started, and then close date, and just kind of try and get like a general view of not only how the onboarding issue performed, but also how the folks doing it ideally perform within the onboarding issue. Okay, so I had to work with the data. This was probably the most challenging part of my internship. Like, all data analysts have to clean their data set, and I was faced with a number of challenges I had never encountered before, including kind of string parsing in SQL. I really want to get into the nitty-gritty of like what everything I had to do, because it was so torturous, and I want you all to experience that, but I'm gonna actually not do that to you. But this is a good kind of visual representation of what I was doing in terms of cleaning. So yeah, so working with the data primarily was me getting it to a point where I could start doing analysis on it. Okay, now I am going to show you my work in progress Periscope dashboard. So we're gonna like hop out of this and into what I did. So I created 3 charts. This first chart being the cumulative closed issue by cohort. So basically, I broke down, once I got the hire date of each person, I broke it down by cohort, month they were hired. So this chart is showing us cohort and percent closure by months to close. And so the most recent cohort is August 2019. And like here, I'm having a hard time reading my own chart. But we are doing better than we were, I think. So, does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. Okay, moving on to the onboarding performance by cohort. Okay, this is probably my favorite chart, and this is where we see kind of from the beginning of time, the onboarding, like total closed issues, remaining open issues, and then this purple bar is showing like time in terms of completion, like how many days does it take? And we can see that the days, even though the onboarding issues have like greatly increased, that the actual time in terms of days it takes to close the issues has decreased. And then the third chart is I have onboarding tasks per day, right? Because the onboarding tasks are split up into 5 days. And we can see that the tasks complete are pretty standard from day 1 through 4, and the tasks incomplete are standard day 1 through 4, but then on the 5th day, the incomplete kind of jumps up a little bit. So I'm gonna go back to my presentation and talk about, now that I gave you like a brief, you saw what I did a little bit, and you can feel free to check it out and look at it further. But basically, if we look at July 2018 to July 2019, we've had 109% increase in onboarding issues, which is crazy, but also fits with the hiring pattern that GitLab is on. And the average time from hire to issue close date has decreased by 157%. So that's like 131-day decrease. So that's good. That's a good sign. And tasks by day, this one I think is something that we could take and iterate on much further in terms of getting down to the details of like what actual task, instead of like just splitting them out by day, if we can figure out a way to split out actual, like each task, and then see if there's one specific task that like people are not doing, or, and then if they're overwhelming number of people not doing it, we should just get rid of it. Things like that, like using more of a drilled down task by day analysis to like make decisions on what we should include in the onboarding issue and not include.
Hey, Eugenia, could I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
So is that saying, I just wanted to make sure I understand that those particular numbers. So like, if I'm doing my onboarding issue on any given day, if there's 10 tasks, then I'm doing 8 out of the 10, and then 2 are being left incomplete per day?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what, so basically the chart that I broke out by day. And so the average by day is, 81.4% complete and 18.6 incomplete. And so that's what that means. Does anyone else have any other questions about?
That's for open and closed issues, right?
Right, yes. So this includes everyone. It's just open and closed issues within the last 6 months. Because I know, the onboarding tasks per day have changed.
So it's possible that recently opened issues are driving this average up, right?
Yes, it's definitely possible. because we have like 109% increase in onboarding issues, July to July. So yeah, these, it's been pointed out to me, and I think that this is something like moving forward, maybe hire date to issue close date isn't going to be the most perfect metric, since we are sometimes, closing onboarding issues if they've reached a certain amount of time open. So that doesn't really reflect if the person has actually finished it and then closed it. It's more like it's now we just automatically close things. So this metric may or may not be useful in the future, but I think it's still interesting to look at comparatively. Does anyone else have any other questions about this?
So is that a good thing, Eugenia? Are those numbers saying it's good or needs improvement, or what's your take on that?
So I think it's hard to say. I think that primarily it's good, but I do know that kind of in the midst of me breaking out this metric, that we did kind of mass close a bunch of issues that had been like open for over I think 60 days. There was some, but it was in an effort to kind of like clean things up and to move forward with kind of making the onboarding issue a little bit more efficient and that process a little bit better. So I think my calculations are showing that it's that the performance within the onboarding issue has gotten better over time, even though there are much more of them. But it could also be like arbitrarily better. Because, because
and then I was going to say that one cohort chart, like the first one that you showed, maybe there, if you could, that might be able to help say, this cohort after that, those mass closings of issues, then, that would be a good point of comparison, huh?
Totally. Yeah.
So when were those mass closings? Do you remember?
I think they were in June.
Okay. So June right there.
Well, this is.
Yep, that's June.
Yeah, I don't think there's any clear way to know, like by looking at the data, to know that they were part of that mass close, though, because it's any cohort.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you for answering that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. It is. I mean, I think it's really kind of. Let me get back to my presentation. I think it is really just overall like super interesting to look, just to kind of break this out and look at it, think of ways that we can in the future. If the more we shape the onboarding issue that everyone has to complete, the more specific we can get about tracking not only the performance of the onboarding issue itself, but ultimately to then see if we can take onboarding issue performance and over time look at individual performance and see if there's any relationship between, like, if someone did an excellent job and closed, got all of their tasks done and closed their issue, if they then perform well in whatever role they're in. If we have those measurements, we can kind of try and see like how useful the onboarding issue as a whole is, right? Because if we can get to the point where we see that high perform, like the majority of folks who maybe they didn't do well in the onboarding issue and they didn't finish things and they just kind of forgot about it, but they still perform really well, like that would maybe call into question like the onboarding issue in general. But those are like really kind of big, down the line questions that I was just kind of, scratching the surface of and seeing where these insights could ultimately lead. So yeah, that's my Periscope dashboard, and the conclusion is just a thank you, thumbs up, and clapping emoji, because I've had a really great time and I've learned a lot, and I hope that the onboarding issue information, that we can take that and have it be useful in the future for GitLab. And now I kind of does anyone have any more questions? I know everyone is super busy, and this, wow, this is a really short presentation. But does anyone want to talk about, have any questions?
Go ahead, sorry.
So we can have more of a conversation.
What?
Why don't you stop sharing your screen so we can have a conversation?
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, Eugenia, I was going to ask you, like, I'm really curious about your experience as an intern. So what would you say, coming into the internship and going out, what would you say are like some of the big, maybe or light bulbs just in your growth as an analyst and kind of your growth and your skill set, just kind of what are the big takeaways for you?
That's a great question. Basically, this is something I'd never done before. All of my data analysis experience has been with very information and kind of just like general cumbersome, like I wasn't working with, sort of state-of-the-art systems. And so I think one of the aha moments I had was that our biggest challenge, it isn't that we, get the data, do the analysis, and then like put it away. It's like this data is always changing, and sometimes it's not even the data changing in terms of like constantly being updated, but sometimes the structure of the way the data is stored changes, and then you have to go back, and you as an analyst need to be aware of all of kind of the underlying factors of like what is informing whatever analysis it is that you're trying to perform, and being able to speak to well, why is this number wrong because of some kind of error that's more kind of on the engineering side, or being able to understand that and identify that was like a big learning thing for me. And yeah, my experience otherwise was just like getting used to being in the command line, which I feel pretty good about. But it was just a really nice kind of complete immersion into a remote working environment, which I've never experienced before, and how folks communicate and how things get done, and how that's constantly kind of like a work in progress. So that was like a really big thing for me too, to kind of understand like the remote aspect of everything. So
thank you.
Yeah, does anyone have any other questions?
So you have other work experience. How would you compare like the GitLab way of working? You touched a little bit on the remote piece, but the other things that I think are uniquely GitLab, how does that compare to your previous experience, and what was the hardest part?
Completely. The hardest part probably is that with GitLab is you're not kind of, you don't ever fly under the radar. And I feel like most of my work experience, there's always like a little part of my job where it's like, you know, I don't have to worry about people looking at me too closely. And that is kind of like a safety blanket sometimes, because in my traditional work experience, usually it's those mistakes that are highlighted as like incompetence or, you know, some kind of failure on my part. But the biggest lesson at GitLab was that, you know, we're working with systems and with technology that's constantly changing and being updated. So like, of course, everyone is going to be making mistakes, and kind of relearning the idea that like a public mistake isn't a bad thing. A public mistake is like a learning opportunity, not only for yourself, but for everyone else. And so was getting used to the idea that instead of slacking you, specifically Emily, asking you, like, is this what I should put in my issue? It's like, no, you should just, it was like understanding that I just make the issue, and then if there's something that's missing, you'll tell me on the issue. And kind of this, being public about the learning process and, you know, mistakes made, and how that's not a bad thing, you know, and how I don't, you know, you don't need to worry about that, and how like focusing on like a single mistake is just a waste of time, and you just always have to move forward. So
that's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Anybody have any?
So how would you talked a little bit about what possibilities for this next analysis would be, like if we were to iterate on this, how would you hope that the results that you've presented today affect something in the business? What change would you recommend someone make?
I think that I would probably recommend, which I know we are currently kind of doing, is just a better, more efficient onboarding issue. And I would just hope that we can change the onboarding issue in a way that will make folks empowered and like on board, but useful or just productive, I guess, as soon as possible, and not to kind of get bogged down with, you know, the number of tasks. I do think that like a lot of what the onboarding issue covers is completely necessary, and, you know, it's something that you would, if you were in a actual workspace, you would kind of go through and have a meeting with HR, and then you would sign documents, and it would be, you know, that would just be like one day of your life, and you would move forward. So I think really, like, ideally, I would love for this to kind of inform the way that like just remote companies onboard people in general. I mean, I know that we're at like a very smallest point of that analysis, but I think like moving forward, we could see like how to best do it, and then kind of be a, you know, a role model in that way. So yeah.
I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. Does anyone have any other? No? Well, I will say thank you to everyone who I have gotten to know, and everyone who's helped me. It's been such a beneficial summer, and I will take this with me forever.
Thank you. It was so great meeting you and getting to work with you briefly.
Yeah, not to be too dramatic, but it was, yeah, it was really, I had like a lot of very transformative moments. And I think that it's such a cool thing that I was able to connect with as many people, you know, kind of like worldwide, that I mean, I never would have had this opportunity if it weren't for GitLab. So, yeah.
Is this your last day, or?
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think, like, technically.
Okay.
I am.
Do you want to end the recording now?
Yeah, I'm going to stop the recording.